Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. This is Chris Parker, and I am with Rainier Willems again. So we're going to flip the script on this as Rainier is doing some research and some work, and he has some questions for me. So just in the spirit of playful discovery and sharing, we just decided to press record on this, and let's see how it goes. So for this podcast, I am getting interviewed by Rainier. Rainier, tell us why we're here and what we're doing, and fire away.
Great, Chris. To be honest, I've been looking forward to this and to our conversation on value. No secret, I'm passionate about the concept and the notion of value, but it's a broad notion. It can mean many different things to different people. And at the moment, I am speaking with leaders in the business world, academics, healthcare, and also culture, to find out what is value actually. And so I have a few questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's start with the first one and the short question. Chris, what is value?
What is value? You did give me a little bit of a preview of the questions about a week ago, and my brain has also been rushing with different ideas. So I have a couple different answers to that. You said it was a short question. I think the answer might not be so short. The one where it really resonates with me is in the context of customer experience design and customer experience strategy. And from that, one of the things I've learned as the psychological aspect behind customer experience is the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self. And the reason that's important is, we are having right now this experience that we're having a conversation and we're seeing each other on Zoom and it's recording and this is happening. However, tomorrow and next week, it'll be my remembering self, meaning I will not be in the experience, but I'll be remembering back. And it's that perception of value, which I think is most profound and meaningful for me. And the work that I do. Now, the reason why that is profound and valuable is in a business context and well, I guess in a personal context, is it's the remembering self that drives future decisions. And so loyalty decisions, referral decisions, and building off of Alpha DeBehe's work, who used to be with Forrester. He's spoken about sacrificial loyalty, meaning are people, willing to continue to pay full price, or are people willing to maybe buy more from you, or are they willing to refer a friend, truly refer a friend, not a net promoter score, imaginary refer, but truly refer a friend without being incentivized, that they're just really emotionally loyal. And that emotional loyalty comes from the remembering self. And for me, a great story of that is Disney for me. So yes, I have a Mickey Mouse tattoo. So I've literally inked myself with a Disney logo. Oftentimes when I'm in a Disney park, there are real moments of frustration, of cost, of wait, of delay, of line, of rain, of lack of food, and I love it. I love it. I cannot get enough. I just take my money. So there is the dimension of, and I really, really value it, and I really, really value sharing it with people. And I bring people to Disney parks, and like right now I promote Disney. And so it is not always good service, meaning service at, giving everything to me. It's really a rich experience with specifically designed, good pain and branded pleasure and and it just really, really works for me. So when I look back at, Disney experiences, I really value that. I value the pictures I took. I value the, the souvenirs I bought, and that all just contributes to my really wanting to go back. And during the Corona time, that makes me want to go back even more. So that's maybe a long story on my definition of value.
Great. Yeah, I like your distinction between the experience self and the remembering self, and also proves that value is quite personal, or can be quite personal. Just a little challenge. Suppose you're selling an ERP system or something maybe not so exciting to some people. It will be difficult to find that level of personal value.
Well, I don't know. I'm in the process with a fashion brand right now, and they are in the market for an ERP system, and they have actually engaged me to give advice on that. So, and not surprising, I have taken the position that I just described of basically saying, okay, you want some advice on technology. That is going to be the last thing we speak about. So before I can give any advice on technology, tell me why you're here, as far as like a mission, purpose of the business. Why do you exist? And obviously profit is a result. It is, part of any sustainable business is a profit motive. Who are the customers? Meaning, and what are the channels that you bring your product, in this case, or service, your experience, to your customers? I've purposely gone out and looked at and felt, in this case, shoes in stores, in the brand store, just to discover it, and spoke to the different people who are delivering that experience. So the B2C online salespeople, the people in the retail stores they sell to, they're sellers that are selling to buyers, and discovering, okay, well, what's happening here? Because there's a value creation, value capture, dialogue, dance going on. And can you quantify that? Meaning, what is the expected, call it revenue or margin contribution now and forecasted in the future versus the costs? And the costs, meaning, shared overhead costs, shared marketing costs, as well as direct costs that you can attribute. And then from there, you go into the actual, process, system and data, that sort of operating model aspect, and say, okay, well, what is it about, that's where the value, talk about the revenue creation's coming from. And then on the flip side is, what are the inefficiencies? So now we're getting into the process, the whole discussion of the process. And in my experience, the ERP implementations, the true value of that is actually the process thinking you do before you even implement the system. I think you can get 80% of the value just by really thinking about your process. Yeah. And the more standard or clear, less exceptions with the process, of course, the more simple the ERP system will be. The implementation consultancies won't like that, because they thrive on complexity. And the more complexity they can bake into it, the more consulting hours they have. That's also why I, as a principle, separate people giving me tech strategy from doing tech projects, because let's just avoid any possibility of conflict of interest there. And then also look at, okay, if you have, in this case, say 20 applications in your landscape and you need to do an upgrade, what other applications can you either remove or replace or integrate better? So there's a whole cascading discussion of value that has very little to do with technology here. What is the contribution to the actual revenue? What is the productivity as far as cost saves? What are cost avoidance? How can you create value through process clarity? And then what I actually did yesterday is went back to the CEO in this case and told him, I said, well, you're looking at the ticket price of a new ERP system, and that's not your biggest cost. Your biggest cost during this whole thing is going to be your people's time, your best people's time, not focused on your customer for a period of 6 to 12 months. So let's also put the cost dimension in perspective here. And
you can very easily make also kind of your back of the napkin calculation and make a first quantification at it quite simply, and it doesn't have to be academically correct and whatnot, but gives a first picture, and that will, I think, that will create insight.
Yeah, and again, this is not what I typically hear in the market. So you know, when I come in and say, well, you want me to give you technology advice, and I'm going to talk about that last. I think at
least you took the learnings of many years and thousands of failed CRM implementations back in the day. We all started with technology, and then we had to figure out what was the process actually, what the thing was implemented already, and yeah, so good, and thanks for that. yeah. But it also, for me, an observation in this example is that it is very easy to make things complex and to talk about the complexity, and you know, you can throw in all kinds of system terminology and requirements and whatnot. That's the easy part. Distilling it down to the essence, and the essence and the value essence, if you will, that is the hard part, and that is what I hear that you are doing in this case.
And like you said, from your CRM experience, that I think, you know, if you've lived in a corporate land for longer than, you know, 10 years, you will have suffered from a large scale system implementation. And the hard part will happen. And it's just a question whether you do it before or after. And if you do it after, then you're going to be really limited in your scope of options, because the system will already be implemented, and basically you're stuck. So please do the hard work. It's good work. It's meaningful work. It's valuable work. Do that up front, and then that will actually minimize the pain and suffering. Because I was talking to the IT guy there yesterday. I said there will be a trough of disillusionment. The whole, you know, the valley of despair on the first day, that will be there. The question is, the hard work we do now will minimize the depth of despair. So you just have to pick where your suffering will be in order to get to the you know, the productivity or the value, you know, the promised land, you know, after the implementation. Yeah, and that reminds me of a number of interviews that I recently had with procurement professionals, and also talking about their perspective of value. And with these type of projects, Chris, and the approach that you are describing, this will also take sometimes a bit of a different perspective from the buying organization, and let's call it procurement for now. I get a sense of security and a sense of de-risking if I, based upon the technical specs, really describe to a supplier what it is that I want. Certain APIs, certain whatever, and that gives a kind of a sense of security, at least as a procurement person. This is what I get, and now we can control that, and then that's done. If it works or if it delivers value, that's somebody else's issue. So if you want to open up and say, hey, I'm open up to together, first go to this process that you just described, and talk about what are the outcomes that we're after, and based upon the outcomes, then start to work. You need to be able to take a little bit of risk, because you cannot specify everything up front, and determine what the world would look like in 6 months from now. So that also takes a little bit of risk, sometimes a little bit of corporate courage to go that route, which is also a reason that in some companies, also the buying organizations, is really difficult to buy on value rather than to buy on product specification. It's a challenge. I have as well. Many reactions to that. Two main ones. The benefactor of the purchase is not procurement. It's actually the business organization. And I think if the business organization is lazy and not able to really describe why and what and when that they want what they want, then it's actually setting up procurement and the supplier for failure. You can also see this a lot of time in recruitment, where the manager doesn't really know what they want, and then so a recruiter in desperation just cobbles together something, some words, and they put that out to a headhunter who just interprets it differently, and then the candidate sends a CV in, which is also not formatted in any way to actually describe what they can actually do for the organization, and the whole thing is just a mess. And when I talk to people about technology, it's usually based on frustration, and I say, well, don't worry about the technology you're buying. Yeah. It doesn't matter. And they're like, well, of course it is. Like, no, because it's going to change the next day. So the technology will evolve. The absolute most important thing is, do you trust the people building the technology?
Yep.
And if you cannot say that you trust the people building the technology, then just don't buy it, because you will be constantly fearful and uncertain and doubtful. And that takes, and again, that comes back to that human relation of knowing what you want and knowing why you're there, and basically knowing, can you work with these people? Because for me, technology is a very human endeavor, because stuff will go wrong by definition, either an expectation or technical things or bugs, and it is purely down to the relationship and the motivations of the individuals to solve those problems ongoing, and that is what will actually build in the business agility. And if you instantly start hammering people with SLAs and penalties and horror and you need that in a contract in case things go violently wrong. But if you manage a relationship with a hammer, all the time, then forget it. I think again you've set yourself up for failure, and value will not be created on either side in that case.
Yeah, and that's also a great example of the notion of relational value, relationship value in that sense, and how that contributes to the overall picture. Interesting, Chris. Interesting.
One little anecdote there, and it's hard to do, but it's because back when I was, the group CIO lease plan, something I tried to do, and it got started was actually have an ecosystem. We actually had barbecues for the ecosystem, and we sat down with our vendor partners and said, or suppliers who said they want to be strategic partners. We said, okay, well, in order to be a strategic partner, we need to sort of open our kimonos. And so what I'll do is I will create space environments for you to get to know people, understand, the business drivers and understand the business humans. And we would actually like to present to you our books. So we would show you our financial drivers or financial situation, as well as our business strategies. And on the flip side, we would like you to do the same. So show us your cost base. And so we can really make meaningful shared risk and reward deals. It is just, there's so many factors in the corporate landscape that work against that kind of transparency. It's almost impossible to have a meaningful conversation like that, which I found really fascinating, because this is where this is where the magic is done, if you trust each other enough to actually share. And I was never able to really pull it off completely yet.
You run into some interesting situations. I remember that same company, we together with a customer, by working smart together on managing driver behavior and whatnot, realized savings or gains, and we were in a sharing model with that. But then we had the customer contact that says, but this is, now I get money back, but now I need to figure out in my company how to organize this in getting money back. It's more work for me. It was an interesting conversation. That only happens within large corporations. And by the way, that's also interesting. What you see is that in large corporations, different disciplines, different departments will have different views on what is of value to them, to their department, different value language. This is where you see things go wrong. You basically never see it with small entrepreneurs. It's all together. What you see is what you get. It's one voice. It's one definition of value, one offering. It starts to become an issue sometimes in somewhat larger companies. Chris, what we have seen over the past few months is we had this COVID situation going on. And I also see that COVID does have an impact on the notion of value in some cases. If you talk about value or the cost of a barrel of crude American good old US oil, in April of this year, you would get some money on top of the oil that you would get for free almost. That was new to me. You see people all of a sudden waking up to the notion of how they value face-to-face or personal interaction. Never knew it was that important to me. Do you see a shift in the value or value perception in people or businesses due to the current COVID situation?
Again, just a whole waterfall of thoughts from that. One answer, well, obviously yes. And as I've been in contact with so many people, also through the podcast and through my other, expert networks and things, there seems to be two, if you can bucket them in two sorts of approaches that, and I would call it maybe the abundance and the scarcity mindset. And there are some people and organizations who have said, hey, this is a temporary thing and there is abundance. And even though we're suffering now, let's take care of our people. Let's send them desks and things at home and make sure that they're okay. And that's one response. Another response is more of a scarcity of, oh my God, we need to really batten down the hatches in order to survive this. Let's jettison, all the dead weight. Let's maybe even use it as an excuse to execute some strategic restructuring that we couldn't have otherwise. I'm really consciously not applying judgment to either of those right now, because wow, those are hard discussions to have and those are hard decisions to make. But those are sort of the two main sort of themes of reaction. And I think that those are driven by the perception of long-term value potential of either people have a basic belief that it's there or a basic belief that it's not there. And then they have to therefore work for it. I've had some delightful discussions around redefinition of value provided based on purpose. And I was on one sort of mastermind call with people in South Africa, which again, I saw this scarcity abundance thing. And at one point I had to introduce and say, why are you being so negative, people? Okay, let's, it's easy to get on a call with 20 people and start complaining, but I'd rather not do that. Let's start looking for opportunities. And then during one of those sessions, a lady, very entrepreneur lady in a essentially like a auto servicing company, like a ANWB or AAA type company, and she said, yeah, well, the reason we exist is to basically provide services to travelers, and now no one's traveling. And it was wow, that was what a cool, and that was apparently the conversation they were also having internally. And the creativity that erupted from that open, vulnerable question was like, well, and one of the most beautiful ones was like, well, you can still fulfill your purpose, even though these travelers are not actually traveling. They are travelers, but they're at home. And maybe they have other needs, and maybe you have other assets. And some of the, I don't know what they did with it, but one of the suggestions was, well, you have a call center that can handle 8,000 calls a day. Maybe there's emergency services that could use a help, or you have technicians that drive around. Maybe elderly people could, have help setting up their Zoom at home in some safe way, or, but all these creative things of other ways based on your purpose and your mission and your assets and capabilities to actually create value. Lovely story. Granadilla Eats, and I've interviewed them. I did a little similar to this. I was pursuing people that are really doing meaningful things during Corona, and I heard about Granadilla Eats. And I did the same thing. I said, hey, we're about to have a conversation. Let me record it. And that turned into a podcast, which was great. They were a swimwear company that was then basically shut down. And it was also coming into the winter in South Africa. And what they realized is they had all the assets in place, and they realized that there was local produce farmers that had the restaurants and hotels were shut down. And so produce was going to go to waste. And there were people who couldn't go to the store, and the grocery stores were shut down. So they just, within like 2 or 3 weeks, they created a whole supply chain based on their capabilities to connect those two dots. Yeah. And again, that was, I think, astounding, because again, it was abundance thinking. So it was like, hey, what can we do? And let's find, with our passion and our assets, other ways of creating value. Where things have not been so good, and I've not found a solution to this, is that human contact that you mentioned. In different executive discussions, what people are feeling is they're missing not necessarily the human contact, but that's also there, but also what the serendipity factor. Because if everyone is isolated in their Zoom, and like us, we're here and we're on task, the possibility for serendipity, at the water cooler, or if it's a business conference, the beer at night where the magic is done, that whole magic, fortunate accident serendipity moments are gone. And I think therefore people are starting to need and want. They're starting to recognize that they valued that, which used to be called waste. Get from meeting to meeting. That used to be called waste, and now they're like, well, wait a second. That was really valuable stuff. That was. I want more. I want some of that. And so I think the perception of what is valued is certainly shifting. Yeah, great. That's food for thought. Touching upon two notions is the notion of the abundance thinking. I think is a very interesting one. We might fill a complete podcast with just that notion, Chris. And the other one is the serendipity factor. There's something there. Some new combinations, some new sparks that you otherwise wouldn't have. And there's value in that. The question is, what is it? And it's sometimes difficult to define upfront. And that's the case with value sometimes as well. Sometimes even with hindsight, it's difficult to see, but it pays to make it visible and to and basically sometimes also to count your blessings as a matter of speech. Very interesting, Chris. I could continue this conversation for the rest of the day. I know our time is limited, so I'd like to thank you very much for your insights. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. And happy to. I would love to continue the conversation some other time. But for now, thanks again. Great. Well, Reinier, thank you so much. Let me jump back into the podcast closing mode. And I know you are doing a lot of interviews with other experts in different domains, including cultural domains and things like that. And so I'd really urge people to follow Reinier on LinkedIn, Reinier Willems, and as sort of these insights and this knowledge is shared, I'll be looking forward to seeing that come on your feed there as well. So I'll put Reinier's LinkedIn in the show notes of this podcast as well, and really looking forward to see what you discover after talking to people about value in these changing times. So great. I enjoyed this as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Learn more at ebillion.com/podcast.